It's FYF Sports, man. It's Lamont here. We back with another reaction video, man. We had to get back to our reaction series, man. It was so many videos out there that I was seeing that I wanted to react to, that I wanted to touch on. I couldn't pass it up. So I made sure today that I sat down, took the time to pull up these videos, especially videos that correlate to some of the conversations that we have in our live debates. You guys, if you haven't jumped in our live debates have been great so far. I'm talking about great. Just yesterday, our live debate got up to over 2,000 people at one point in time. Now, again, those numbers aren't common. Those numbers are definitely higher than we expected. But again, that just shows the support that we have here at FYF Sports. You guys are loyal. You guys show up. You chime in. You hit us up in the comments. You guys have been donating to the channel, hitting the like button. So again, appreciate everybody for supporting the channel, jumping in on those live debates, touching on some of those topics that we like to discuss. But I saw this video right here. I wanted to share with you guys, and I wanted to react to it. It's basically Jay Bilas. Jay Bilas is a very, very popular sports announcer. He does mostly college basketball. He played at Duke University. He played against Michael Jordan. And he spoke on the narrative that guys in this era couldn't play in the 80s or 90s. And I just want to listen to his take on this, because once I saw the topic, I was like, I don't need to watch this. I need to make sure that I react to it immediately so we can get an organic reaction to what these guys are saying from that perspective. And now, again, I like that it's coming from an older guy. This is an older guy that played in the 80s and 90s. He played against Jordan. He played in that era. So I'm real curious to see what his take on this actually is. So make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell to the video before we get started. But what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and play this video so we can kind of hear what Jay Bilas has to say on this particular topic.
Because he was also watching Last Dance, and he had this to say on trying to compare eras. All right, this is what he tweeted yesterday, and he tweeted it along with this image. MJ is the best ever. That's an enormous compliment given the greatness of others. Yet some say today's players wouldn't be dominant in the 80s or 90s. Not true. Or do we similarly believe the 80s and 90s players wouldn't be dominant in the 60s? Today's player is better than ever. Now just look at those numbers on your screen. Bill Russell won MVP in 1962 despite the fact that Wilt Chamberlain averaged 50 points and 25 rebounds. Look at Oscar Robertson's numbers. Look at Elgin Baylor's numbers, 38 points and 18 rebounds coming off the bench that year. So, Jay, this all started with a text you sent me right after the show, in which you made it pretty clear you were not happy with some of the things you heard said here on Get Up yesterday, which I'm totally good with. I want to give you the floor. What is it about the generation of players today that you think people are missing?
Well, I think it's this romanticism of yesteryear in light of The Last Dance. Look, I loved every minute of The Last Dance, and I've loved every minute of the Michael Jordan retrospective. I played against Jordan in college and thought he was amazing then and now. I think he's the greatest ever. But that's a profound compliment to say that you think someone's the best ever. It doesn't diminish who's second or third. Like, I'm saying Michael Jordan is better than Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. That's profound given the greatness of Kareem. But this idea that somehow today's player would not be dominant back in the 80s or 90s because they could hand check back then or the game was different, I find that ludicrous. The idea that LeBron, Durant, Kawhi, Giannis.
Hey, man, y'all hearing it live right now. Y'all are hearing it live from Jay Bilas, man. And it sounds like he's mirroring some of the same sentiments that we say. At least, some of us with more unbiased sports takes, it's easy for us to sit down and say, you know what, great players are going to be great in any era. That's just how basketball is. Great players are going to be great anywhere. And that's how the game is. And I like what he mentioned early on, y'all. It's exactly what we always be saying. It's the nostalgia tied into the 90s that people don't want to let go of. They don't want to see anything better than what they actually saw. They don't want to admit that the product that exists today in NBA may potentially be better than the product that they grew up loving and enjoying. They always want to say, and I think it's an ego-driven thing. I think it's the ego not allowing them to relinquish the fact that, you know what, these players are really good. These players could be really good in any era, including the era that included Michael Jordan. That's just facts, y'all. That's just facts.
Doncic, Harden, Westbrook, Curry, you name it, Klay Thompson, they wouldn't be dominant back then. They might not have beaten Jordan's Bulls, but the players of the 80s took them to 7 games. And, Jordan and Pippen, those guys, they beat, I think it was 7 teams. They eliminated 7 teams that had won 60 or more games. They were great. But I don't ever hear any of these, similarly old men like me saying that, wait a minute now, the players of the 80s or 90s, they would have really struggled against the players of the 60s. And I kind of wonder, I'm a reverse get off my lawn guy here. I kind of wonder when this precipitous decline of skill and toughness started. Did it start in 99? Because I don't buy this. I think the players today are better than ever, and we do this only in basketball. I've never heard anybody say, "You think Patrick Mahomes could have got a pass past Ray Nitschke or Mike Trout? You think he could have hit that crazy sidewinder stuff of Kent Tekulve? Forget it. Simone Biles.
Hey y'all, what Jay Bilas is saying, and again, this goes to show my point that I just stated. Basketball is a game of a lot of players with crazy egos. When you're dealing with a sport where it's only 5 guys on the court, it's you and 4 other guys, your face is out there, everything you do is right there out in the open. This is not a sport like baseball where you have 9 guys on the field spread all across, hats on, you don't know their faces. It's not like football, everybody has helmets on. You have linemen, you have 11 guys on the field. You can always hide behind that mask. Basketball, you're right out there, out front in the open. It's a really egotistical sport. You have to have a really hard skin. You have to have thick skin. You have to have a really tough ego to be successful at the game. And that's just how it is. So when we're talking about players, especially players and people from that 90s era, we're dealing with a lot of egos. We're dealing with a lot of people that don't want to just simply admit the fact that things are better. And again, when you look at these other sports where you got guys with helmets on who don't have the egos that NBA players have, you don't see a lot of this egotistical driven narratives by saying just what he said. We don't say, well, what if this running back played in this era? We don't say, what if Zeke Elliott played in the 1990s? He wouldn't be as good. We never make those arguments with any other sport but basketball. And that tells you right there that it's all ego driven. It's you wanting to say that I'm still the best. I'm better than them. They didn't get any better. They're doing it worse. The way we did it was better. You only hear that in basketball. You only hear it in basketball. And again, you have to look at the people that actually play basketball. I love the sport. I love the game. I've been playing it my whole life. But I got to be honest about the game of basketball. When I'm honest about the sport, we have to come to the conclusion that we're just dealing with a lot of stars of the past and of the present who have crazy egos. Look at LeBron. LeBron pronounced that he was the GOAT before he even retired. That's ego. Jordan in the 1990 Olympics, when asked who would take the last shot, he laughed at the cameraman and said, I'm definitely taking it. And he was playing with Hall of Fame players. That's ego. Like, you got to have a crazy ego to be great in the NBA, because it's not an easy game. In any era, it's not easy. So I don't like anybody trying to diminish one era to big up another. It took a lot intestinal fortitude to play in any of these eras. You got to be great to play in the 90s. You got to be great to play in the 2000s. In this era, you got to have some level of greatness. You got to have you got to have a really tough skin and a really big ego to even get that far in your basketball career. And that's just the facts of the matter. I'm going to go ahead and let's hear him out, because this man is making some real good points.
You think she could have beaten Olga Korbut in her prime? We never say that nonsense. But we say it in basketball, and somehow we believe it because they could hand check back then. Now, that doesn't make any sense.
Let me throw a thought at you here. I do not think anyone, I for the most part agree with the fact that we only tend to do this in basketball. I completely agree with you. The players of today are more skilled than ever before, and they avail themselves of things that are available to them today in the areas of technology and medicine and things like that, and that would make them greater athletes. But when Mark Jackson said they're cut from a different cloth, do you see that? Because you're around young people now. You're around college-level athletes and all that all the time. Do you think the mentality of the young people coming up in the sport today is similar to the mentality of young people coming up in the sport when you were one of them?
Yes. Absolutely. I don't buy for 1 second that because Tom Brady was born in the 70s and that these current players in the NBA were born in the 70s or 80s, that somehow they don't know what competition is, and that all died out with players that were born in the 60s. That's nonsense. And it's similarly nonsense that somehow the players in the 80s or 90s weren't as tough-minded as the players who played in the 60s. Look, like the greatest generation ran up Omaha Beach. I have tremendous respect for that. But courage and greatness didn't die out when later generations came along. That just doesn't make any sense to me. The players today are competitive, and this is all in light of Michael Jordan being the greatest and watching that. Jordan's attitude and his drive, I think, are unmatched. But it doesn't mean those that were with him didn't have similar drive. It might not have been as good, or that his leader, like, you win and everything's justified. His leadership style may be questioned by some. I don't have any problem with it. And the fact is, he won with it. But that doesn't mean that other leadership styles don't work as well, and would not win. There have been a lot of championships won since then. Jordan's just the...
Hey, again, he's breaking it down. He's breaking it down in a way to where I feel like everybody, I don't see how you can disagree with this particular take. And I think we're just getting to a point in time right now where I think a lot of these arguments, especially these narrative-driven arguments where you have to say, what if this player was at this time? I think it's more so about feeling like you're right. It's not about common sense. It's not about respecting anybody's greatness. It's just about trying to sound right. When people make these arguments to try to say, if this player was in this era, he would do this, or if that's just you trying to sound right about your era, And again, these are all questions, especially when we have to say what if, or we have to look at the game back in the 90s and say, because of these rules, they were better, or the game was better. That's all subjective. It's just so opinionated based, but that just goes to show you, especially when it comes to the game of basketball, the egos that are involved. We're dealing with so many egos. People are always trying to find a way to say that their team, their era, their favorite player, they're always going to try to find a way to support that player regardless. You don't have too many people that are going to bring that unbiased approach. I try my best not to be biased. I try my best to look at everything on the table. And I'm still biased. I even admitted that on my live show yesterday when we were talking about, Kobe Bryant and Tim Duncan. There's biases, and then even as I was talking, I was like, dang, my conclusion on Kobe Bryant being better than Tim Duncan was based on certain biases. This is just about being honest and just admitting to yourself what's reality and what's not reality. But man, we're gonna continue to let this guy cook, man. Because I like the fact that he's a respected basketball mind. He's a respected and very respectable basketball mind. He's been doing this for a long time. He's older. He's seen all levels of play. And when you hear this man talk about the game today, you can tell he has no biases. He respects the development of these players. He respects the game, but at the same time, he also respects the past as well.
Greatest, and that's a profound compliment. But the idea that today's player wouldn't be dominant back then is to me ludicrous.
I don't disagree with that. Guys, I'm going to keep it here because I want to stay on this conversation. Here's the difference, Jay, or a difference that I see. If you look back at the early part of Michael Jordan's career, when he was coming back from a bad injury and the team was begging him not to go out there and play, he was insisting on going out and playing. He played 82 games a year, each of the 3 seasons of their second three-peat. The notion that players today preserve themselves in the way that they do. The idea of rest and all that kind of stuff that we see in the sport today, that I think is one of the reasons people point to. If you told Michael Jordan that we're going to sit you out of this game because we're playing 3 games in 4 nights, which they don't even do anymore, by the way, I think that's where you might see some of the difference in mentality.
Well, I mean, some of the different, I don't think the mentality is any different. I honestly don't. I think these players play incredibly, but they're looking at a different landscape now. I mean, that's like saying back in the day, pitchers, like Tom Seaver never came out of a game for a reliever. He pitched complete games. And now Clayton Kershaw comes out after the 6th inning or the 7th inning. The game has changed. And the landscape has changed. You know, even back when MJ was injured, Jerry Reinsdorf and his team were looking out for their investment. Right. And the investment back then was not as profound in a player as it is now. They put a 7-minute restriction on him. He fought against it and ultimately was allowed to play more. But you know, the idea that players aren't playing hurt now or they don't want to do it, I just don't buy that. I think they compete just as hard. I don't buy that somehow, you know, Tom Brady, because, you know, isn't as tough as Joe Montana because the rules are different and you can't hit him like you used to.
There you have it right there, man. We got, you know, we got him. We got Jay Bilas' take on this crazy. He calls this argument ludicrous. When you say players of the NBA today couldn't dominate in other eras, he considers it to be ludicrous. That's his opinion. I want you guys to let me know what you think. Do you think players of this era could go into other eras and dominate? I think they could. I think the only era of basketball where we say players couldn't dominate, we only say the 90s. We only say that because Michael Jordan was in that era. And to say that players like Kevin Durant or Kawhi Leonard or Steph Curry could go into the 90s and dominate would potentially mean that you would have to concede to the fact that Jordan could have been beat. You know, you guys saw me in a debate when I was speaking on Hakeem Olajuwon. If Jordan would have matched up with Hakeem Olajuwon in the NBA Finals, would Hakeem have beat Mike? You have a lot of 90s fans who are scared to answer that question honestly. Because they'll be quick to tell you. They'll be quick to tell you that Hakeem Olajuwon had a 6-2 record against Michael Jordan and the Bulls in the regular season. But when it comes to giving your prediction on who would have won that series, you find them scared to answer. They're scared to say that Hakeem had a really good chance to win. And a lot of people will say that when the Rockets won their 95 championship in 1995, Jordan was in the league. Jordan came back. You have some people say, oh, he wasn't the same Jordan. Yeah, but that same year that he came back, he dropped 55 on the Knicks. It looked like the same Jordan to me. He had some really big playoff games going into that. You know, he looked like the same Jordan for the most part. We just, at that point in time, we were not used to seeing Jordan blunder or fail. And so when Jordan blundered or failed, now we have to find every excuse in the book for that particular failure. Now, Jordan did not fail a lot in his career. He was 6-0 in the finals, but he had a lot of failings early on in his career. He came into the league in 1984. He didn't win a championship till 1990-91 season. I mean, so again, it's just about being honest about the game, doing these honest breakdowns. But again, you guys, let me know what you think. You know, we might touch on this when we go live today. We might touch on this particular topic right here. Could NBA players dominate in other eras, primarily the 90s or 80s era? I really want to touch on that some more, and I really appreciate Jay Bilas' honest take on it, because I'm just tired of seeing people try to diminish and trash players of this era as if they don't put in the work. These guys live in the gym more so than players of the 80s and the 90s. You know, they're working on their game all year round. They love the game. They're turning it into businesses. They're not just turning it into businesses, but almost every NBA player now has their own basketball camp. So now they're spreading this into their own communities. I mean, if you look at Jeff Teague, he has one of the biggest basketball camps with his brothers in Indianapolis. Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, like we didn't see that in the 90s. There was no Scottie Pippen camp, or there was no David Robinson camps. Like, we didn't see those camps. But now every player, now they're turning what they do on the court into a brand, into a business, and I love it. So, you guys, again, let me know what you think. Let me know what you think about this. I would love for you guys to chime in on it. and touch on it. And then also, again, come into our live debates. If you haven't been to our live debates so far, make sure you do so. Make sure you chime into those live debates. Hit that notification bell so when we go live, you can see when we go live. For the most part, we'll be going live before every finals game. Today is probably the last finals games. I expect the Lakers to close it out today. But if not, then we'll be going live before the next game. So again, I'll try to keep you guys in tune and up to date with our schedule on how we go live. For the most part right now, it's kind of random, but I want to try to go live at least 3 to 4 times a week. FYF Sports, man, another great reaction video. And we out.